Brighton Supervisor Bill Maley, and I'd like to welcome everybody to the December 10, 2014 Brighton Town Board meeting. We always welcome community participation in these meetings, whether you're here in the audience or if you're watching at home on your television or streaming us live on the internet. We welcome you and appreciate your participation in open government here in Brighton. I would note that our agenda and supporting material are on the back table for anyone here in the room. They're also available online at the town's website, www.townofbrighton.org, for anybody that's either watching on TV or streaming us live on your internet. If you're at home and would like to call in when we get to the open forum portion of the meeting, please call 303-3060 and someone will take your call and relay your question. 303-3060 to ask a question or make a comment during our open forum portion of the meeting. If you're deaf or hearing impaired, you can use our TDD line at 784-5205. Again, the TDD line to participate in the open forum is 784-5205. We do welcome your participation. I'd like to start with a pledge to the flag, and I'd like to ask Town Board Member Jim Vogel to lead us tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jim. In case of an emergency, if you hear the town hall alarm system activated, please leave the room immediately, either by the door to my right, illuminated by the exit sign, turn right, go down the stairs, go out the rear entrance to town hall, and move away from the building. Or either of the two exits in the rear of this building, through the lobby, out the front door of town hall, and away from the building. Thank you. We do occasionally experience technical difficulties. Time Warner does during the live telecast of this meeting. If you do experience any difficulties with the live transmission, please contact Time Warner at 756-5000. Again, that's 756-5000. We'll now start the open forum portion of our meeting. As always, we welcome your participation. You're free to address the board about any matter, whether or not it's on our agenda this evening. If you are here to address a matter that's on the agenda as a public hearing, and we do have one public hearing tonight on our new proposed local law, gender expression, non-discrimination, please, and you'd like your comments on the record, please wait until we open that public hearing at about 7:30. But I will recognize members of the audience wishing to speak. When you're recognized, please come to the podium. Please, if you would, give your name and address. Please direct your comments to the board and not to other members of the audience. Please be courteous and try to keep your comments as concise as possible. So with that, we'll begin the open forum. Would anybody like to address the town board during the open forum? Josh?
Hello, my name is Joshua Barth. I'm the county legislator for District 24, which encompasses north central Brighton and parts of southeastern Rochester. And I'm just here to give a report on the happenings in the county legislature, which I like to do as often as possible. And I must point out, coming here in this weather, it was actually a pretty comfortable affair. The streets were pretty clean. I was very happy about that, so all is well. Last night, the full legislature met, and as you may already know, passed the proposed county budget of approximately $1 billion. It's actually $1.05 billion. It was passed on a vote of 18-9. No amendments were made to the proposed budget, and it passed very cleanly that way. The budget increases non-mandated taxable revenues by 1.5%. That's about $1 million. But it also increases fee-based revenues by about 10.7%, and that's for the equivalent of about $9.8 million, which means on the average, the non-mandated budgetary increase is in fact about 6.5%. I think it's important that we recognize that fact, that while the overall budget is only up by 0.4% due to an increase on mandated expenses and mandated funding being increased, but it's the non-mandated piece that you hear about is in fact going up pretty gosh darn significantly at 6.5%. Two amendments were offered last night. One was regarding the restoration of funds for child care, and one was regarding foster care services and the retaining of 9 positions. They were both defeated. On other news, the legislature also authorized the sale of a piece of property owned by MCC, so by Monroe Community College, for approximately $240,000, and there will be a public hearing. It's scheduled for January 13th at 6:15 p.m. at the county office building if anyone wishes to speak to that. And that, in fact, is right at the beginning of the full legislature meeting. And assuming the sale proceeds, which at this point in time I anticipate will happen, that actually means that that parcel will return to the tax rolls and, in fact, will be taxable in the years coming forward. In addition, we did authorize another sale. It was a sale of a parcel located in landfill in Riga, and that was a sale of the landfill land to Comida for $1.3 million. And there were some concerns about that, and they remain, because as you probably know, getting land that is not otherwise a landfill turned into landfill-eligible land is extremely difficult, and we may need this land in the future. However, currently we have $1.3 million more to put into the general fund, which is why it was done. Personally, I voted against that, but that is neither here nor there, and I hope it works out in the way that the administration proposes. Finally, I just wanted to point out again that the committee meetings, every month we have committee meetings. For this cycle, they are next week, Monday through Wednesday, beginning at 5 p.m., and they generally end about 6:30 p.m. So that's when the 15th through the 17th. If anyone wishes to attend to observe, I always encourage that, or to provide feedback on any relevant topic. And by the way, you get to define what relevant is, as long as it's within the purview of the committee. I would urge you to attend as well. And with that, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to entertain.
A couple of questions, Josh. The MCC land that you referenced, is that one of the Startup New York parcels identified by the college?
That is not my understanding. My understanding is that it's a parcel being sold to a private, I think it's a realty firm. I could be wrong about that, but it's my understanding it's not connected to any of the startup zones. And I specifically talked with administration officials regarding whether or not it would be going onto the tax rolls, and they indicated to me that in fact it would be.
Okay, good. My other question, the rate increase proposed for Monroe County Water Authority. Mm-hmm. I had some concerns as to whether some of the increases, particularly in personnel in the Monroe County Water Authority budget that were described as the reason for the second straight year of about a 4% increase in water rates. Was any of that a reallocation of formerly county forces? Was that a reshuffling of the deck in any way, do you know?
Not that I'm aware of. I would not say that is not the case, but it is not my understanding that it is. When we talk about the water authority and the rate increases that occur over time, typically, if I remember correctly, there were 4 different water authorities in the county, and they have different rates for each authority. And they vary based upon past commitments, past bonding issues, and things along those lines. And the main concern we always have with that is that there have been some past projects, some massive projects that have been paid off, and we don't see the rates going down. And so what I have found is, and I'm not speaking as an accountant, so take it with a grain of salt, but what I've found is that it's not that county monies are transferred into the water authorities, is that the water authority monies are transferred out into the county to provide support for balancing the budget and to otherwise make sure that claims can be made that we're not raising taxes.
Well, what I was concerned was sort of the reverse of that, was expenses being taken out of the county and put into the water authority. Same result.
Same result you're right. Yeah, that I believe that does occur as well.
Okay, because there's been a pretty significant increase in the administrative line of personnel costs over the last 2 years. They also mentioned costs of restoration, post-construction restoration, which in last year's budget wildly exceeded what they had budgeted, and so they, for whatever reason, put a much larger number in this year, and I didn't know why they were that far off last year by a factor of double.
Yeah.
Obviously some expenses have gone up, but that seemed very significant, and I didn't know whether there were any specific projects that accounted for that.
The answer to that is no. Actually, costs were up across, I shouldn't say across the board, but for many, many projects, costs were dramatically higher than expected, primarily due to transportation costs, gasoline, and oil expenses last year, not currently, but in the past fiscal year. And I can't tell you for a fact that's the case for the Water Authority, but all I can say at this point is you should have come and testified and discussed this. It would have been, I'm sure, very valuable to the process. But to answer your question, I couldn't definitively tell you there's a specific reason, but I can tell you for almost all projects that we were associated with in terms of that had anything to do with construction, the prices almost, it was always a matter of course. It exceeded the expectations. One after the other, and I'm assuming there was some similarities.
Interesting, because although we've had to work hard in some cases to keep costs down, we have not experienced anything like a doubling of our construction costs, Tim, under your leadership.
You're correct, Bill.
And I would have liked to have been there at that hearing today, but
I appreciate that.
working on town matters.
Yeah.
Thanks, Josh.
You're welcome.
Josh, question.
Yes.
Was any discussion during the proposed budget to increase the support of the homeless in the county?
Actually, no. Not in the committee meetings I attended. I can't speak for every committee meeting, but actually at the aside from child care subsidies, a public speaker was there at the actual legislative meeting last night. That did not arise, and it did not arise because people were focused on the child care subsidies. I think the current administration has done and said that they're going to, all that they're going to do at this point in time. I don't think we can expect, barring outside funding of some variety, any additional funds from this current administration. So I can't give you a better answer than that. It's unfortunate. I think there's clearly a need, and I think that need is actually spreading throughout this county, as we all well know. And it's not something that's going to go away. And in fact, I suspect it's going to get more and more challenging as years go by. And I think it'd be better if we actually devoted additional funds now to that. I mean, it was one statement that came up last night repeatedly was a budget is a statement of priorities. It's a statement of values, and I think that's true. And we have to really, soul search. Are we doing the best we can for all, or are we not? And well, I think that's a choice that each one of us has to, come to on their own, in decision and a judgment. There's
a significant number of homeless and indigent that are under the bridge down there, and as a result of throwing them out of the Civic Center garage, which was not the right place to be. Mm-hmm. But it's still the county's responsibility, as I understand it, and it seems like they've been derelict in that. It's a state mandate. We are, it's a loaded term, but in fact the state does charge the county with taking care of those who cannot take care of themselves or have lost the ability to do so. I mean, it was pretty sad when they throw them out of the Civic Center garage Labor Day weekend, and you find that the 4 benches in front of the county building were occupied by 4 of the people that were thrown out of the garage. It's a sad statement for what's going on with the county level, I got to tell you. And the other question I have is, I hope they're not into selling tax liens again in order to artificially close the budget. And in fact, we are selling tax liens again. Wonderful. Yeah. Which is a challenge. We get about 33 to 40% on the real value of the tax lien by selling it off to a third party. And that's artificial closure of a gap that could be better managed if a few people down there had the courage of dealing with the problem we have before us. Well, it definitely is a challenge. I would say that the more often you rely upon the sale of tax liens, the less return you get.
because when the first time you do it, there's a lot of easy tax liens collectors can collect on, but those go quickly.
Yes, we
And
do.
it's a challenge, and as my colleague Paul Haney would point out, it's a double whammy because the fact is, not only do you get some pennies on the dollar, which might range between 60 and 80%, or maybe lower, but whatever it might be. Beyond that, you also forfeit any upcoming any interest that you earn on the outstanding tax debts, which in fact would go to the company with whom you contract. So they in fact benefit from pretty significant insurance interest rates on unpaid tax liens, which from my point of view is money left on the table. It's a challenge. Gives you money today. It gives you money for the current budget, but you're really robbing the future to pay off current budget expenditures.
Yeah, and the sad matter of fact is, back on the homeless issue, a significant number of those people are not residents of the city of Rochester. They're from the suburbs.
Mhm.
A lot of people don't realize that. It's a sad commentary for the county government to really treat lightly with the dilemma that these people have. Consider tonight being out in that snow in a tent underneath a bridge.
Indeed.
You know? We can do better.
It is my hope that in the future we will do better.
Thanks for raising that issue, Jim, and thank you, Josh.
You're welcome. Thank you all, and I was derelict. I should wish everyone a joy to the season, and with all the upcoming holidays and festivities, to have an enjoyable time, but also to remember, in fact, that we have to keep safe ourselves and help others who are less fortunate. I think that's something we should keep in mind as well, and in fact, I'm sure we already do, but I want to make sure to share that with the audience as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Josh. Is there anyone else that would like to address the town board during the open forum portion of the meeting? Appears we've had no phone calls either, so why don't we continue with the meeting. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mailer?
Aye. And a motion to approve and file the town board meeting minutes for the October 22nd, 2014 town board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mailer?
Aye. We're still a few minutes ahead of 7:30, so we'll hold on the public hearing for just a moment. Can I have a motion to receive and file communications?
So moved.
Second.
We do have correspondence from our longtime maintenance mechanic and facilities administrator, Kevin Hall, advising us of his upcoming retirement. He will be retiring effective December 27, 2014. This is an old building. Kevin Hall has remarkable local knowledge of this building, and you know every nook and cranny, and we really appreciate all the work that Kevin has done. And we will be having an opportunity to thank Kevin in a different opportunity, but just want the community to know what great work Kevin has done for us for a lot of years. And we also have correspondence from Dr. Ann Kress, president of MCC, thanking the town for the recognition of the work that MCC is doing for the veterans. As I pointed out on Veterans Day, MCC has enrolled more veterans than all the Ivy League schools combined. MCC has been doing, really engaged for many years in a variety of programs aimed at bringing educational and vocational opportunities to veterans. No one knows that better than the gentleman to my left, who, Jim, you've worked yourself in a variety of ways to make sure veterans get the fair shot that they deserve in the educational field. And so we appreciate the opportunity to recognize MCC for their work and thank Dr. Kress for your kind letter back.
It is remarkable, the number of veterans that are
Oh, it is.
in MCC.
It really is. And,
Yeah,
I'll put in the plug. I know you do all the time, but, You know, where else do you find people that have had to take on the leadership roles that the young men and women that have served in our military, particularly the ones that have served overseas in some very difficult surroundings? If you're looking for someone as an employer with leadership credentials that can, as they say, lead under fire, you're going to find those men and women, veterans coming out of our military.
Sure, for sure.
So we have a motion to receive and file those communications. Oh, sorry, Louise.
I'm sorry, I'd like to also talk about a letter we got from Midtown Athletic Club. And it's a very, very positive letter on the advantages of the segment of the trail of the, what's it called, the Auburn Trail. And for the people from the Harley School, from Council Rock School, the kids to walk there to and from school, and for the apartments and professional offices around there. This town board has heard the negative reasons why that trail should not be made available to people, but this letter is the first that I've seen of the very positive reasons, and I think that we should think very long and hard about it.
Thanks, Louise.
I agree with you, Louise. That's I've been on that trail. It's a great resource. It's one of those linear parks that are available to us for very low cost for development. It's an old railway line, and it would really connect us up to the, I've kind of bushwhacked down it, unfortunately, and that's what you have to do at this point. It's rough going. But a large number of people use it, walk their dogs there and such, and I think if we developed it, it would be a real asset for the town.
And it goes from in Brighton, it goes from Highland to Clover, past Clover actually, to it keeps going into Pittsford. But it's wide and it's a beautiful trail.
It's widely used right now.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. If nothing further, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio? Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Okay, it looks like it is
Almost.
7:30.
Okay.
So let's go back to the one public hearing we have tonight on the proposed gender expression non-discrimination local law. Dan, has the necessary legal notice been given in this matter?
Supervisor, it has. It was in the December 4th edition of the Brighton Pittsford Post.
Thank you. I declare this public hearing open. I do want to note that you have in your packet attached to the proposed resolution in the original version, you have a proposed amended version of the law, which makes a few changes. As we discussed last time, the purpose of the gender expression non-discrimination law, or Brighton's gender law, is to reflect the many years of inaction by the state government at granting basic civil rights to transgendered people throughout the state, but particularly here in Brighton. This law, as proposed, is based upon civil rights legislation that the state now has in effect that ensures equal rights, not special rights, equal rights for all New Yorkers, except, up till now, transgender New Yorkers. And it's that gap that if the state is unwilling to close statewide, I very strongly, and I hope my colleagues will agree with me, believe should be closed here in the town of Brighton to make sure that all people do have equal civil rights, whether it's employment, housing, other accommodations, hotel, restaurant accommodations in the town of Brighton. So that's just to explain why you have two versions in there. I did get some comments and had some opportunity to discuss with Councilmember Novros some suggested changes, and it's some of those changes that were incorporated in here. Most of them I don't think have a major substantive modification. One thing I would note, though, is that from the original draft, in the definition of employer, the original draft had language that would have excluded from the definition of employer people in domestic service employment.
Still in here.
That should not be, Louise. No, it's not in the new version that's
Oh, it's under
attached.
employee.
It's in the new version. Oh, okay, yeah, that should be out. You're right.
Supervisor, if I could speak to that issue,
Yep.
please. So as Supervisor Maley indicated, the idea with our local gender expression, non-discrimination, local law would be to extend to those transgender individuals the same protections that are afforded to other groups under state human rights laws. And the definitions that we've selected for the local law, including this definition that we're looking at for employer and the definition of employee, are taken directly from the definitions in the state human rights law. So I don't think our intention here is to, as you said, provide extra protection for the transgender group beyond what is provided for other groups that have been historically discriminated against in New York State. So if we were to try to accomplish that goal, we should have definitions that track the human rights law of the state of New York. So for all of those categories of groups protected under the State Division of Human Rights laws, those definitions also provide for an exemption for domestic employees and for employers who employ fewer than 4 individuals.
Do you have a sense, I mean, I understand because the other exception there in that definition relates to people employed by, family members, parent, spouse, or child. The domestic service exception seems odd. Did you, in your preparation of this draft, find any legislative intent as to why that's?
I didn't look into it. I thought the sense that I got from the board was that we were looking to extend the same type of protections. That isn't to say that we couldn't extend more protection than is provided to any other group in the state of New York, but that would seem to be reaching beyond what the original intent was.
Although I don't really see that as special rights unless there's a really strong reason that people in domestic employment be excluded from this protection. It seems consistent with the goal of creating equal rights. But I hear your argument, and I don't know what the pleasure of the board might be on that. But why don't we? I wanted to just lay a little groundwork here. Let me, before we spend a lot of time talking up here, I want to open the floor up. And is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this town board in the public hearing? Judy.
Judy Schwartz, 179 Ashbourne Road. I'm proud to live in Brighton for many reasons, and one is our being very proactive on important civil and social justice issues. I support the town's gender local law 150%. For several years, I've been going to Albany with Interfaith Impact of New York State for our annual Advocacy Day, and gender has been one of our issues for too many years. And we always have people who will benefit by the passage of laws come to speak to us to give us information and background. And I have to tell you, the stories that these people share with us are totally unbelievable, but sadly true. So I thank you, the town of Brighton, for wanting to enact gender in Brighton. It is the right thing to do, and hopefully it will pass someday in Albany. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. I will say we have as well, that the board has asked me in the past to communicate, particularly with Senator Robach, because gender has passed in the Assembly several times. and we've, asked Senator Robach to support this legislation. We don't know where Senator Robach actually stands because the Senate leadership has never even allowed it to come to a vote on the floor. So, if nothing else, the opportunity to take a vote is part of sort of the open governmental process. And I hope, frankly, that this law, and whether there are deviations from the state law or not, become moot very quickly, that a new legislature will take a fresh look at the law and make a decision to go forward at the statewide level to consider this. I know, Dan, you've talked to people in the community. I've talked to people in the community, transgender residents of the town of Brighton, that have asked us first to work to get state legislation, and then have asked us, when that seems unavailing, to take action here at home.
Absolutely, and to those residents, I mean, if when folks don't think there's an issue, I mean, you just have to look at the local radio personalities earlier this year that, that kind of perfectly explained the need for this, because there is a lot of misunderstanding. I don't know that all of it is necessarily ill intent behind it or anything malicious, but there's just a lot of, people don't necessarily understand, what these folks have to go through, just everyday life. And unfortunately, I think that situation kind of highlighted why I think it's applaud the board for putting forth this legislation.
I brought up to you earlier about the educational practices. And what was your final take on that?
Well, what this law does do, we have several academic institutions here in Brighton that are affiliated with faith groups. And the law does not in any way say that they're somehow exempt from gender. What it does do is recognize that faith-based educational institutions may prefer members of their own faith. So it does not say that they may use as a claimed expression of faith the ability to exclude transgender individuals. What it does say is that they can give that, for example, a Jewish school, Hillel School is here in Brighton, or a Catholic school like McQuaid or Mercy, can, and I don't know what their admission policies are, but that they can give preference to members of their own faith. What it does not say is that they can discriminate against transgendered people, whether of their faith or not. So it's intended not as a means to avoid compliance with law, but simply to clarify that the mere fact that they may choose to prefer students of their own faith is not in and of itself evidence of discrimination.
Except that each of those schools you mentioned, well, Mercy and McQuaid are single-sex schools. So, I guess a transgender female would not apply to McQuaid.
Well, I don't know, what their policies would be. I do know that McQuaid got a lot of very positive publicity, I thought, and I shared with Father Salmon that I admired the courage of the school and the administration in welcoming same-sex couples to their senior ball, I think they call it. I thought that was really a stand that Father Salmon personally took, because his letter of support was really very moving, but also that the school had done that. So again, I'm not suggesting that one or any of these schools might or might not discriminate. But I do think it's important that we recognize that as faith-based schools, they may wish to admit people of their faith. And there are Jewish transgender,
Sure.
there are Catholic transgender, there are Protestant, Muslim, so. Is there anyone else that would like to address this matter, either in the audience or up here?
Yeah, I think this whole proposal is based on our desire for fairness in our law, and I think it's a good one.
Would any, I am going to ask when the motion comes on to recognize that we are amending the law to conform to this, but I guess I would ask whether there's anybody that would like to make the amendment to strike the phrase "or in the domestic service of any person" from the definition of employee.
I would amend.
Make that
therefore.
motion.
I move that we strike that phrase from the resolution.
I'll second that.
Okay, and we can vote on that amendment and then vote on the full matter. But before we do that, let's close the public hearing. If we don't have anyone else
Would
here,
that
Dan?
domestic employment, that wouldn't fall under the fewer than 4 employee exemption?
It could. It could well, but it's possible that someone would employ more than 4.
True. I assumed, when I had read that, I assumed that's why that was
I think
still
it's
there.
very likely that most people in Brighton probably employ fewer than 4 if they employ domestic employees, but I frankly share that sentiment, Louise, so, but let's first,
It could encompass a party, where you have a lot of people coming in to serve and.
those aren't employees though, Louise, those would be employees maybe of a catering firm, but those would not be employees they would not be considered domestic employees. They might well be covered separately because they are employees of some other company, or that someone is otherwise discriminating against those people. But domestic people, domestic employees really would be people that, on a regular employed, whether full-time or part-time, are providing service to individuals in or around a home or in their daily activities. A driver might be a domestic employee, someone that is an employee that comes in and cleans or provides other services in the home. Okay, let's, no further comments either from the board or from the audience. I declare this public hearing to be closed. Louise, would you like to make that motion to amend this law now to exclude the phrase "or in the domestic service of any person"?
Yes. In the gender expression non-discrimination local law, I move on the amendment to the resolution that would exclude domestic employees from the discrimination law.
Ken, should we start with a motion to approve the whole law and then ask for an amendment on that?
Procedurally, that would be more
All right,
correct.
let's do that.
Because we don't have the,
We don't have a resolution on the floor to amend.
Amend.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I can then have a motion to approve this current version, the revised version of the gender law.
right, the resolution that you have prepared in your packet refers to an attached proposed local law. That is not the correct version. So what I would suggest is whoever moves to adopt the resolution as prepared, substituting the corrected version of the proposed local law.
Thank you. So let's start with that motion. And would you like to make that motion, Louise?
Okay. On the matter of the gender expression non-discrimination local law, I move on the resolution that was the second.
Prepared by the attorney to the town.
Prepared by the attorney to the town, substituted by, with the more up-to-date,
The revised
revised
text of the law.
text.
Second.
Now, we can hear a proposed amendment to that, and now would be the time for these two.
On the proposed amendment to the gender expression non-discrimination local law, I move that the phrase in the domestic service of any person, it does not exclude any person in the domestic service of any person. I move that that be removed from the proposed resolution.
Can I clarify that that would be the phrase beginning with the word or in the domestic service of any
Okay.
person to be stricken? Okay. We have a motion to amend to strike that language. Jim, you're seconding now? Then let's have any discussion on that amendment.
Supervisor, I would just offer again that that would be different than any other category. Under state law prohibits discrimination against race, creed, color, national origin, sexual orientation, military status, sex, or disability. And so those rules in state law do not apply to domestic workers. We would be providing a local law that does protect domestic workers generically and would define them as an employee for purposes of transgender only, while those other categories would not enjoy that same protection.
Ken, let me ask, such a change would not, there is no comparable state law, so there's no issue of preemption.
There would not be a preemption issue. I would point out to the board that there is a specific provision in the state human rights law regarding unlawful discriminatory practices with respect to domestic workers, which provides for specific protections, if you will, for domestic workers because of their unique circumstances. We do not have those protections in our proposed local gender non-discrimination law.
But those would apply to domestic workers in the town of Brighton already.
It would apply to all domestic workers, and I would just point out there's two portions to this section. It's section 296B of the state of executive law, and it provides for a prohibition against unwelcome sexual advances, etc., in one subsection. And in the second subsection, which is more particular to what we're doing here, it provides that a domestic worker shall not be subject to unwelcome harassment based on gender, race, religion, or national origin, where such harassment has the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's work performance by creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. So if, again, we are looking to parallel state law, perhaps the more particular amendment that we would want to make is to add that section of state law to our local gender non-discrimination law and specify that it would be for those transgender individuals that we're seeking to protect.
And that might make sense at a separate time. Jason?
Okay. With respect to the human rights law that you just recited for domestic employees then, Ken, so are the only classes that are protected under there just based upon sex, race?
Creed.
Gender, race, religion, national origin, which, right, is a even more limited.
Correct.
Right.
Doesn't
Set
include
of
military
categories.
status,
Military
doesn't
sexual
include,
orientation?
yep,
Okay,
Doesn't include disability.
right?
yeah.
So
Well,
I mean, just,
that may be so, that, you know, that's a good catch. It may be something we want to add as a separate law to consider here in the town. I guess from my perspective, though, the opportunity today to include domestic employees as covered by agenda, yes, it's different from state law, but I think it's worth doing and would not be preempted by anything that you see there. Nor are we intending to preempt anything in state law.
no.
And nor is it inconsistent. This isn't a situation, you know, correct me if you see otherwise, where this legislation is so inconsistent with state law that it would have to comply with the home rule. Fine.
No, I
Supersession,
think it's appropriately legal. I just wanted to point out some additional information with
Good, it's
respect to
helpful.
what the state
Yeah,
human rights law.
And we can't always assume that the state laws always correct in our view.
Well, I think that's why you're taking this action in the first place, is because I think the board had hoped that the state would have taken the step that you are looking to take tonight in any event. So, sure, I absolutely understand what you're saying.
If there are no further comments, we have first a vote on this amendment to eliminate that phrase, or in the domestic service of any person, is the amendment on the floor. And if there's no further discussion, Dan, please call the roll on that amendment.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFanzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. And now, is there any further discussion on the underlying motion to approve this local law as amended?
There were just a couple issues that you were discussing earlier. If those are resolved to Councilmember Novros' satisfaction and the board's satisfaction?
That's the motion we have on the floor. Okay, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFanzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
I'm proud to be in Brighton today, too. Aye. Proud to be in Brighton every day. But I think this is the right thing to do. It's the right thing for the state to do. And I want to thank my colleagues for taking this step.
I think there needs to be little discussion of this law to the extent that it's so obvious there's a need for it, and it's the appropriate thing to do.
It's good to see Brighton is we're the first town in Monroe County to pass this. The city of Rochester has something similar, and we're the first town. So
Yep.
hopefully we'll be the trailblazers.
And there are many other communities throughout New York State that have taken.
Well, and
This
the country,
action.
for that matter.
And
Other
the
states, I
country.
believe New Mexico, I know was one. There are others as well. Have it in place.
Good. Okay, let's move on to committee reports. Louise, Parks and Recreation and Community Service.
Parks and Recreation and Community Services has not met since the last board meeting, and they are not meeting in December. The next meeting is on the 26th of January at 4:30 at Brookside School. Public is welcome.
Thanks, Louise. Finance, Chris?
Finance met Bill on December 2nd, last Tuesday. As is typical, most of the matters are on tonight's agenda and will be reviewed there. There were several other matters for discussion only regarding the quote for the renovations of the kitchen and restrooms at the town park. The Carmen Clark Lodge came in higher than anticipated, so we're going to have to discuss that further. And also the need or not of giving authorization to Chief Henderson to renew the vehicle maintenance contract at the 12 Corners Mobile and Austin Spencer Collision. Those contracts had provisions in them for extensions at our option, and therefore they need no additional approval. But there will be another meeting on Tuesday, next Tuesday, December 16, at 3:30 in the Stage conference room here at Town Hall behind us, and the public is invited to attend.
Thanks very much, Chris. Public safety, Jason.
Yes, the Public Safety Committee met yesterday, and amongst the items that were discussed were the continued conversations with neighbors over in the Monroe Meadows neighborhood. There have been some complaints about the speed limits, and there are some inconsistencies. Some of the streets are 25 miles per hour, other streets are 30 miles per hour. So that's going to be actually presented for a public hearing after the first year about changing the speed limits to be all consistent at 25 miles per hour throughout that neighborhood. So that was one item, and another item that was discussed, a matter of old business, was continued data collection over in Evans Farm. Some complaints regarding traffic and speed concerns from neighbors over on Idlewood Lane, and we are continuing to do data collection on that. And then another item that we do is we review special events at the Public Safety Committee. And we were advised that one of our special events won't need review because it's moving to Webster, and that's the Tour de Cure, which had been at MCC for the past couple of years. But that presents challenges, basically getting from the MCC campus out to the longer routes out into Livingston County. It causes the cyclists need to go out onto East Henrietta Road or Brighton Henrietta Town Line Road, then past Jefferson Road, all those highly traveled streets in Henrietta. I believe it's going to be moving to Webster and then going out to Wayne County from the Xerox campus, which should hopefully be a little bit safer. But it's nice to have these events in Brighton, but with some of the traffic and some of our more of our densely populated areas, sometimes it's just not so feasible. So, but anyway, that was about all that was on the agenda, in addition to the networking between the various public safety agencies that serve the town. Our next meeting will be on Tuesday, January 13th, 2015. We meet at 8 o'clock in the morning in the lower level community meeting room, and the public is invited to attend.
Thanks very much, Jason. Jim, Public Works.
Public Works met on Monday, December 2nd at 9 a.m. And at that time, we reviewed a
Wasn't
number...
it Tuesday?
Or, excuse me, Tuesday. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chris.
Yep. And by the way, the meetings will be all on Tuesday from
You know,
now
it was
on.
so long, Jim, I thought what you were saying is it started on Monday and ended on Tuesday, because it was quite a lengthy meeting.
It was a morning.
Tuesday went to
It was
Wednesday.
a morning. We broke for lunch. Anyway, at that time, we reviewed the drainage and sanitary, infrastructure of the Rollins Tract. The Department of Public Works staff presented the preliminary results of a survey, the questionnaire that was sent out to all the neighbors in that area. And that was Susquehanna, that was Brooklawn, and all these streets back through there. And we got a significant response on that. 49% came back.
Amazing, tremendous
Which was
response.
really, I laud the residents for their participation in this. This information reflected the properties that were affected by this past summer's significant rain events and the type of problem experienced, like this drainage or sanitary, and the whereabouts of the property where these problems were occurring. That data is going to be further processed by the staff, and an update will be provided at our next Public Works Committee meeting in January. Then the next item was the incentive zoning, the Jewish Senior Life proposal. The representatives came forth to provide an update relative to their project and the status of that process. It's anticipated that the formal action may be taken on that proposal during the January or February of 2015. Again, that's a significant expansion, but a good one, we think, right there at the Jewish home property of the campus. More to follow on that. The next item was the town code, buildings and property maintenance. And Ken, our town council, reviewed with the committee the legal aspects of the type of legislation from a federal, state, and local perspective. A particular emphasis was given on how this affected what the town was desiring to do or accomplish relative to foreclosures and vacancies. Now, we're not coming forth with a proposed change in the code at this point, but we're looking at this and more to follow in the future. Ken, any comment on that, what you want to think?
No, I did receive some comments back from Councilperson Navros regarding the draft of the local law that I had presented. I do know that staff needs to look it over as well. Keep in mind that we do have a fairly comprehensive set of code provisions dealing with building conditions and property conditions in the town. And it's a tough issue to get at because there is some distinct problems in accessing those mortgage companies that really do take over control of these properties in the foreclosure setting. But that's not the only time that we have these vacant properties. So it's a sticky problem. I know one that is of great interest to the town board, and we'll continue to work on finding a good solution.
Yeah, thank you. And the last item was a review of the 2015 Public Works Committee schedule, and we decided that it would be better if, in fact, we moved this from Monday to Tuesday, first Tuesday of the month, which we're going to do. And the starting time, room, or location will remain the same, which will be in the lower level community meeting room, and all these committee meetings will begin at 9 a.m. for the Public Works Committee. That concludes my report.
Great, thanks, Jim. Just one thing to add, to the last item, the issue with property maintenance and vacant homes. We do have quite extensive legislation, and I also I think it's important to note that you can have everything on the books, but if you don't have someone minding the store, and Chris Roth has worked very hard and continues to work very hard on a property-by-property basis. He gets to know the players, and one of my goals is to make sure that he does have access to all the information he needs to do his job as effectively as possible. But Chris really works very hard to maintain properties in the community, and does a good job of it. I in fact, just got an email from a resident about a couple properties today, and I'll be sharing those with Chris. So more to follow, and thank you both. Thank you, Ken, for really some very interesting insights at that meeting.
And if the Public Works Department needs me to interpret some of my notes on that, feel free to call. I think it's half in longhand and half in shorthand, so I'll be happy to help you.
Thanks. New business. We have no old business, new business. Chris, reading and approval of claims.
Bill, I've reviewed claims totaling $303,845.24. Find them to be in order. Those of some significance, at least to me, was $35,593, paying off yet another portion of our outstanding sewer bond. And so we're paying those debts down. I saw that we had $12,382 worth of manholes. Tim, where did those go in?
Chris, they're part of the MCC sewer project that we are extending around the MCC campus that allows us to take 2 of our pump stations offline. We actually just completed some of the driveway boring and, crossings up there for the winter time, and those manholes are the ones that will be stationed along the frontage of the MCC campus. So
it was an unusual item, at least. But also, Tim, I noticed pavement marking paid to the County of Monroe for $21,075. How does that contract work for relationship work?
It's one of these, and as you as I talked, it really is one of these intergovernmental operations that we have and we've had in place for a number of years. Each town or village in the county that wishes to have pavement striping put down on their streets can contract with the county to do that at a rate that is the same rate that they pay for all their county roads and things. So we do have a fairly significant amount of striping that we do in any given year. Some years it involves center line striping, other years it involves more, and so that really reflects the amount of striping we have done on certain streets in town for various needs.
And otherwise, we'd have to have specialized equipment ourselves and specialized employees as well.
Yeah, a lot of times you'll see the painting rig going down a street, and it's a fairly large size rig with has all the paints, all the the chemicals that get mixed to put it down. It has a certain reflectivity. There's certain ingredients that are put in there so it can be seen at night, and some other things too. So yes, a very specialized operation actually, and you're absolutely right. If we had to gear up for it and do it ourselves, it'd be a major investment.
The kind of coordination is good to see.
Yes.
And also 15 ThinkPads went out to the police department. Mark, that's part of your initiative.
I think there was 5 ThinkPads.
Okay, I saw three.
It was
I thought there were
the
five
first-
each. All right, excuse me.
Yeah, that's the phase one of our, it's a budget neutral item where we're going to integrate tablets to the patrol officers. That was the beta test portion. We took delivery of them. They tested out fine. And then we're going to add 25 more tablets. Total purchase price will be covered in full by seized assets in our forfeited asset funds, and it'll bring us to the next level of technology. Not a lot of the agencies in Monroe County have this portability with the ability to write reports at the patrol level. We will have that.
And what a difference, I mean, it's already making, those reports that are coming out. Right on the
Very
scene.
professional.
Yes, they are.
Appearance. You know, we get a lot of FOIA requests, and you don't get so many follow-up questions. It's very legible, and from a perspective of the officer being able to do something quickly, get back on, or in some cases get to the next call, that was the goal of this project. And just with those limited items that we put out, we found right away it's succeeding, and then the next phase will be right after the first of the year. We'll get 25 additional, and patrol officers will be issued their tablets.
Presumably, we'll also be able to respond digitally. You know, when digital FOIL requests come in, the state law amended a few years ago to say, you know, when possible, respond.
Well, part of
by email.
what we've done right now with the tablets as well as the laptop or the computers that are in the car, we are saving them in PDF format. It will be very easy for us to communicate by email in the future. But right now, we're still beta testing that. We're working out some kinks. And once that's all 100% ready to go, we'll let you know. We'll work with the town clerk on our FOIL. And the goal is, you know, even accident reports with residents and visitors alike, being able to communicate that almost instantaneous. We have to have it reviewed and supervisory approved, but that's the goal of this whole project.
Excellent.
Thanks, Mark. But, I'm sorry, Louise, please.
I have a question about the fire district, $37,760.
Louise, can we go into executive session to discuss that?
Sure.
Those are fees relating to litigation relating to the West Brighton Fire Protection District.
Sorry, I thought it was the Brighton Fire Department, and I was wondering why. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, we may.
But that was one of the claims I did note.
Okay.
But I believe the claims to be in order, Bill, and I move that they be approved for payment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Next matter, Jim.
The next item is approval for a collective bargaining agreement between the town and Teamsters Local 118. I move on the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
This is to approve a new collective bargaining agreement with our Teamsters. And Tim, if you could just briefly discuss this agreement.
Thank you, Supervisor. Actually, we're very glad to be able to say that we have a contract that's been unanimously ratified by the Teamsters that are represented here at the town. And without getting into any details, it was a very productive and constructive process that we were able to go through. We feel that the contract itself reflects a very good balance between the constraints that we are faced with as a town and the budget caps that we have to work with, as well as providing a a good, fair contract to our our Teamsters that are represented. We're just glad that we have this, and it is a 5-year contract. So, it lasts quite a bit into the future. 2019 is the cumulative year as far as when we would have to reopen negotiations again, but it has afforded us a good place to be on both sides of the table.
And I think it's also important to note that you know, this is a contract we were able to complete the negotiations on a month, you know, more than a month before the old agreement expired. And you're right, actually the Teamsters Local requested a 5-year agreement rather than a 4-year, and we thought that was a good length for the contract. So thanks for your work, Tim, in making that agreement possible.
My pleasure, thank you.
Can I have well, I guess, Jim, you made the motion. Did we have a second there?
Yes.
Chris seconded. All right, I'm behind the 8 ball here. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Next, Jason.
Yes, the next matter is for approval to hire a particular person to fill the recently vacated position of part-time assistant fire marshal, effective December 15, 2014. I move we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second?
Discussion? We will be hiring David Kaltenbach, effective December 15th. And look forward to David joining us, and I'll thank Chris Roth again for your part in bringing this where we are today. Motion and a second. Further discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Jim?
Yeah, the next item is to approve and request, approve an acceptance of a $385 donation or donations from various residents, businesses, and organizations for the Veterans Memorial here in Brighton. Move on the resolution is prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
Thank you to everyone,
And,
both those that we recognize this time, but everybody that's helped.
This is
Make the
very
Veterans
gratifying,
Memorial.
really.
Yes, it is.
And, again, I would ask that the public, if you're so inclined, please consider continuing the donations, because it's an ongoing item that we need to sustain and maintain in a forthright way on behalf of the veterans in our community. So thank you.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio? Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Over here. Okay. Next, Louise.
The next matter is to authorize the supervisor to execute an agreement with Park Place Corporation to provide day-to-day transportation services for our senior citizens program for 2015. I move on the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
Discussion? This actually,
This is actually a
renewal is at a
decrease.
slight decrease.
Yeah, decrease.
Exactly.
I see that,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a good thing. Thanks, Becky Cotter, for your work in working on that contract for us. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Chris?
Next item, Bill, is to seek authorization to execute the agreement with, an agreement with Relcom to provide telecommunications system maintenance. I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney for the town.
Second.
Discussion?
We've had good experience with them, and they've been serving us how many years now?
Suzanne? A number of years.
Yeah, on several, 06, 07.
Yeah, I thought so.
And no cost increase from 2014 as well.
Yeah, great. Good.
Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Jason?
Next matter is for approval to appropriate $21,155 from the Seize Assets Funding account to support purchase of particular computer tablets, associated software, and peripherals for the police department. I move we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second?
This is the matter that Mark just mentioned, the follow-on to that first beta test. And again, as noted, funds come from seized assets, so they have no negative budget impact on us at all. Further discussion?
Yeah,
Please.
I've heard very good things about Lenovo here, computer tablets, you know.
I was so pleased
Yeah.
with the presentation, actually, about, this is my personal computer. It's a very good, it's IBM, is what it is.
Yeah, they bought the old IBM PC and now tablet operations, yeah.
All
Okay,
right.
we have motion and a second. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Jason?
Yes, the next matter is to authorize the supervisor to execute an agreement with Town and Country Cleaners Incorporated to provide dry cleaning and laundering services for police department uniforms for 2015. I move we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second?
Discussion?
I would just note that this is not just for 2015, but also authorizes up to 4 annual contract renewals without the chief having to come back or the supervisor having to come back to the town board.
So long as the price and the terms stay the same?
Oh, it's at the town's discretion.
Right, right.
We actually did some follow-up communication actually today with the vendor, and they're proposing a no increase for 4 years. They're going to hold the line of it.
Oh, great.
Great.
Okay, we have motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Jim?
The next item is to execute agreement with Geese Control of New York to provide geese control services for the year of 2015. I move on the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
This is, again, a similar contract to what we've done in the past. We do not provide services or we do not receive services in July because I guess that's when the chicks are molting, and
Yes,
that's
that's
not
correct.
considered to be
They're
fair
not-
play, I
they're
guess.
not out and about.
But we're hoping that we don't have chicks because we're hoping that the handling operations are successful. But Tim, you know, we had some issues last spring and summer, both with the pond itself and also the presence of geese. And I know we had we reached the conclusion that largely the pond issues were a function of a very harsh winter. Some of the fish die off that do eat the greens that grow in the water, and there may be some fishing activity that was a little hard to verify. But any thoughts on what we can do in the upcoming year to, to make sure that, that's a nice area, that pond, although it's there for, some, at least in part for drainage purposes, it's a nice asset for the neighborhood. So any thoughts on?
We will, we have an opportunity to procure some grass carp in the springtime. So, having talked with Steve Zimmer, and we actually did look into trying to do that last year, but getting these particular fish, it's best to get them in the springtime. So we will procure some more grass carp, get those in there. That should help control the weeds. The particular weed that was so problematic last year, it flourished until late June, and then right about the beginning of July, right on schedule, once we were able to determine what kind of weed it was, and we talked to Cornell Cooperative Extension and some other sources, it disappeared. So what was there and concerning people took care of itself in a sense. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. I don't know if it's going to be a recurring situation or not, Supervisor, but, we will watch it. If it is the same weed, it should probably follow the same, form and function it did this year. And, the grass carp should help again, and we'll keep an eye on that because if we have to, we will, restock over the next few years, with some additional fish.
Great.
So.
Very good. Thanks a lot for that continued oversight. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio? Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Louise?
The next matter is to authorize the supervisor to execute an agreement with the Animal Hospital of Pittsford to provide boarding and veterinary services for 2015. I move on the resolution as provided by the attorney to the town.
Second.
This is something that I know, Dan, you have worked with to integrate our law to the fee schedule with the boarding, and you've worked with the chief, and you're happy with this arrangement, and we're now self-implementing with the fee schedule?
Yeah, once this contract goes into effect, we'll adjust our fees going forward.
Good. Thank you for doing that. Further discussion?
Yeah, I think it should be noted that Pittsford Animal Hospital, they're the only ones that provides a 24 service, which is rather important when you're dealing with this, right?
Jim, they're the only game in town, really.
Yeah.
You know, when we did some outreach to find out what vendors would be interested in, this is our emergency services when we pick up stray animals or...
Yeah.
And other veterinary hospitals in town may have different names, but share common ownership.
Yes. And then those that are not under that umbrella are not interested in bidding on our business.
Yeah.
Okay.
And these charges are largely reimbursed by the owners that reclaim their animals, is that correct?
Some are. I can't guarantee that 100% are. We budget for the contingency that we cannot find an owner, but a majority of them are recaptured. Right?
Yeah, and we amended the town code earlier this year
Yep.
to provide more flexibility in allowing the clerk to match those fees to what the hospital charges.
Very good. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Chris?
Next item, Bill, was discussed at FAST at length. It's to seek authorization to execute an agreement with PERMA, NEMI, N-E-A-M-I-I-N-C, to provide workers' compensation coverage for 2015. I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney for the town.
Second.
You're right, it was discussed at some length at Finance, and we got some guidance from our HR director and from our insurance consultant. And so it was their recommendation that the Finance Committee ultimately took and recommended to the board that we continue with PERMA.
Yeah, this is the same carrier we've had in the past, and we'll continue on with them.
There is an increase, but that's not unusual, unfortunately, when it comes to insurance and particularly workers' comp.
It is based on experience.
We may go back out to the market. In fact, I think it's likely we will go back out to the market, sooner rather than later. But their advice, and I think it's good advice, is that that's not something you want to do every year in the insurance area because you sort of burn your bridges.
That was a concern.
I think it'd be good if we just took a minute. Let's explain exactly what is it we're talking about here. New York State workers' compensation coverage.
We have to provide workers' compensation coverage, as do all employers, for our employees.
And
In case,
it's an
in
important
case that
item.
they
and
get
it's-
injured
Yeah.
on the job or in connection with their job.
And the premiums do reflect our experience. So if we've
Right.
had workers that have been injured in the past and continue to receive benefits, the carrier charges accordingly. So,
Yes.
But our experience has been
Going down.
steadily improving. Yep.
Yeah.
Is it going down or improving? It's the same thing. Having fewer injuries at lower cost. And, our experience has been improved.
And that was a good conversation. We were weighing the different options that were on the table and asking
Yeah.
the tough questions, and we came around full
Yeah.
circle and decided.
That's what
to
I'm
continue.
driving at. It's just,
Right.
the public really just needs to hear this, rather than just
Big
zip,
up.
zip, we passed it, and that was it.
It's a big number.
You bet it is.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So-
Okay. Thanks, everybody. We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Sorry, what was it? I missed the second.
Jim did.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Jim?
Next item is to approve a bid award to the lowest responsible bidder, which is Ontario Exteriors, Inc., with authorization for the supervisor to execute an agreement and associated documentation to provide general construction services for the replacement of the Operations Center salt barn roof. And that one's due.
Yes,
I'm
it
moving the
is.
resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
As we've said before, the salt barn was one of the stops on our capital improvement project tour this past summer, and members of our budget review task force and some of our, board members had really a first chance to see up close and personal just how, how tough that very salty environment, the damage that does to, that's very corrosive, yeah.
And also how rough the roof was.
Yes.
I know Tim's been asking for a number of years for replacement, and we've been putting it off for many years. And it's time. Also, the spread of the bids was significant, and we got a very good price out of Ontario.
Yeah, interesting, really. Tim, this is a complete tear-off, correct?
It is, Jim.
Yeah, I thought so.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Chris?
Next item, Bill, is to approve a transfer of funds from various highway road repair accounts to particular highway machinery accounts. This will accommodate some repairs that need to be done this year. I move that we I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney for the town.
Second.
Got Jim seconding that. Jason waved. Tim, anything you want to say about this?
It is, Supervisor, a reflection of just as we go through our line item accounts during the year, it's necessary to sometimes transfer, and I think that's a reflection of the job over the past few years of tuning the budget, keeping the cost down. So if fortunately, if we run out of one account and we have money, we can roll into another account to offset those costs. But this is really an administrative step just to make sure we have money in the appropriate account and for these purposes. So.
I see your highway truck 27 and the rubber tire excavator, the Drott,
right,
both need repairs. That's what it'll be used for.
Yeah, they do, Chris. The Drott's a vehicle we try to keep it repaired as best we can. It's an older unit. It would be a very expensive unit to replace. It does have somewhat of a very specialized operation. We use it for doing work. It has a long, boom on it. Ditch cleaning and roadside maintenance is usually its forte, because being rubber tired, you really don't take it off the road. It's not really an off-road vehicle, even though you could take it off the road a little bit, to do some work. So.
Great, thanks. Further discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. And Chris, the last item of new business.
Bill, that's to seek approval for revision of the town's procurement policy and procedures to include best value pricing and amend the price quote amount threshold policy changes. I move that we adopt the resolutions prepared by the attorney for the town.
Second.
This is really the companion to action that we took earlier this year, and we had a discussion here at the town board. State law was amended. The general municipal law competitive bidding provisions were amended to allow municipalities to engage in what is described as best value bidding. In other words, the opportunity not to just look at the sort of the base price of a piece of equipment or a vehicle or something, but to look perhaps at overall operating costs. And that gives you the opportunity to look at, for example, which one will have lower maintenance costs, which one is less expensive to fuel. And all we're doing here is extending that philosophy to our procurement policy that applies to purchases less than the legal limits under the general municipal law. And I think it makes sense, and it gives us the opportunity to, to give guidance to potential vendors and get the best long-term price.
that best value is like, it gives us some flexibility, and it just makes common sense. It's the way people buy things for their homes, the same way. The companion aspect of it was just to streamline perhaps the purchasing and in various commodities, equipment, and professional services, so that it won't be necessary to get as many quotes and as many bids. We're still talking about fairly low numbers here. We moved from $600 to $1,000 and up to $2,000 in some categories, and $1,000 to $2,500. $1,000 to $5,000 for public work contracts. Again, this will streamline the process, and I think save some time and money in the finance department. And Suzanne brought these suggestions, and are these consistent with other town policies as well? Is this parallel?
I did talk to a few other towns, and a lot of them are kind of at the same level, starting to get quotes at the lower limit of $1,000. Hopefully it will save some departments time too, but as we spoke about too in Finance Committee, I mean, our departments, I think, are really good at searching for the best price. I mean, I had an employee come to me the other day with an item they were going to buy for $25. They found it online for $15. And, you know, how can we go about doing this and getting this and saving ourselves the $10? But
We members of the FAST Committee are all in favor of that.
Yeah. That's great.
Good job.
And I just want to point out, I mean, these provisions go well beyond what is required under state law. The general municipal law provides for certain protections, but what the town has done, continues to do, is provide pricing protection, if you will, that goes well beyond what is mandated by state law and provides even more and better pricing protection for the town and its taxpayers.
Good. Thank you, Suzanne. We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel.
Aye.
Councilmember Novros.
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. Matters of the supervisor. First, can we receive and file the expense and revenue report for the period ending November 30, 2014?
Moved. Second.
We will, as always, have a full report after the year ends. Motion and a second to receive and file. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel.
Aye.
Councilmember Novros.
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. A couple more items. Bear with me for a moment, if you would, and bear with me, really bear with all of us. This has been a tough fall for leaf collection. We know it, and I understand the frustration of the people that have called, or maybe the people that feel like, you know, I ought to call and have been too busy to do that. This year has been particularly difficult for leaf pickup, not just in the town of Brighton, but in other towns. I drove through Pittsford just a couple days ago, and just as we're seeing leaf piles on our streets, they were seeing leaf piles in the part of Pittsford that I was in. And a lot of that is a function of the fact that climate change. This year was the second latest killing freeze in recorded weather history, back to the 19th century. It's that late killing freeze that really triggers a lot of the leaf drop, and so the leaves were up on the trees later. I know for some of you it feels like our crews have not been through your neighborhood, or maybe have only been through once this year, but in fact we've just finished a third pass on leaf control, leaf removal through the town. We've started our fourth. I know a lot of people are concerned about the snow. We will pick up the leaves. Just as last year we had snow and worked through it, we're going to do that this year. In fact, early this morning, before the snow got as intense, I know, Tim, you had a leaf crew out, still continuing to do leaf work until the weather got so extreme that we needed them back on the streets. But we will be working out there. We will complete one more pass through the town, and we will pick up those leaves. We understand, and we know a lot of you have called. We want to give the whole community that update, and I think that is really the most important takeaway. We are not going to leave those leaves under the snow. They will get picked up.
Tim, have we been able to maintain a pretty good update on the website, the town website, on the leaf pickup and so on?
Jim, that's a great question, and for the most part, we have. Occasionally, we have a few glitches and human error getting that updated and getting it on and reflecting it. But for the most part, it does do a good job reflecting the day and the next day, depending on where we are. It does get a little touchy because I know it would be nice to put a third day out, looking. But for the moment, that's the best reference we have. I echo what the supervisor has said. We would love to be collecting leaves and getting around through town on a quicker basis. It's the sheer volume of leaves. I know people like to express that it's never taken this long. I had the chance to talk to our former Commissioner of Public Works within the last week, and and as long as I've been here, we've never finished before Thanksgiving. It's usually in the beginning of December, and Tom Lowe confirmed that it is 3+ weeks to get through on a cycle. Now, one of the things, too, that the supervisor has been very, very supportive of, and I know it's a challenge because of the budget constraints we have with the cap and, how things are calculated nowadays, but Bill has been very supportive of reestablishing the leaf collection overtime. Next year's budget will have a significant increase in that, and that will help us get through, and again, it won't be on a 1 or 2 week basis, but by the end of the season, it could save us as much as a week with this
Could you
overtime.
explain how that translates into time and day, Saturdays and so on?
Well, yeah, Jim, generally, and the question gets asked too, as we get further into the fall, the daylight is diminishing on both ends at the beginning and the end of the day. So you have limited opportunity to do that. One of the things we do want to change is if we're working on a street and we can complete that street in that day, we will probably start springing the crews to work that extra half hour or hour, depending on how the light is. Now, you have to remember, too, it's a safety issue. Safety for the crews, but safety for the traveling public. That becomes really our main concern with the lack of light or thereabouts. The other thing is the overtime really is most effective on the weekends. We can put crews out there for a full day, 1 or 2 crews, however many we have the money to budget, in the overtime for, and that allows us to put a full day's effort in. And many times on the main roads, that's a better day to work on the main roads because there isn't the rush hour traffic and we can get things done.
That's really important.
And
the other thing, and you touched on it earlier, at the Public Works Committee, we had a very lengthy discussion and a very holistic discussion of options. So one of the things that I really felt strongly that we ought to talk through and consider are ways to preferably give our lawn care companies an incentive, instead of putting those leaves out on the street, to take those leaves to our town facility. To the extent that they take leaves directly, it saves us all money, and it makes the process of going through quicker. That's something we're going to look at, whether the tree model that we use is the right model or whether there's something else. But we know that this year, leaf collection, none of us are happy. And between the added overtime and the other things that we're very seriously looking at, I think we do have a number of, hopefully successful opportunities for a more successful, faster pickup next year. But again, I can't stress enough, they're under snow tonight, and our crews are working tonight, and we thank them for that. But they will be back out before the end of the week, picking up leaves again.
Right, and the weather is to moderate a little bit, Bill, I believe. Maybe not as much as it had been forecasted a day or two ago, but again, we will be back out, and I do want to second what you just said, is that the crews are working hard. I know there's been, some things said about that, but they are very hard workers, are very dependable. They're, great asset. So, whether they're plowing snow or they're doing a leaf collection, they have been working very diligently in those regards.
Thank you, Tim, and so have you.
And Bill, I know many people have asked about the alternative of a vacuum truck. That's something was looked at length in years past.
We did a study a number of years ago. Tom Lowe did it. It's something that I've asked him that we revisit. You know, whether it makes sense in some neighborhoods, but the big drawback, the big downside of it, just so everybody understands, not just that it's another piece of equipment that we would have to buy, but it's single-use equipment. Those vacuum leaf systems, they're tow behind, but that's the only thing they're really used for, correct, Tim?
That is absolutely true, Bill. The one thing that, you know, that we wrestle with too, how many pieces of these equipment do you want to have to get through town? Because one is not going to solve all the problems we have and go through town and do it any more efficiently. In fact, it's probably a marginal increase in efficiency based upon the report. And we will get that report out and blow the dust off of it and look at it again. But it takes $25,000 to $30,000 between purchasing the piece of equipment and retrofitting, you know, a couple of trucks that you would need for each crew. So if you were to take that and say that you needed 3 or 4 of these, you know, setups, look at how much money you're expending. We have other needs, frontline trucks, particularly large pieces of equipment that we could be putting this money towards versus what Bill just accentuated. This is a seasonal piece of equipment that you would use for about, you know, 4 to 6 weeks. And that's a huge investment to make for something that is not as versatile as other equipment that we get.
As Bill said, we're taking a holistic approach at this thing and trying to figure out what's the most efficient way to go about it.
Yeah.
The next thing I want to talk about, because there have been a couple of articles just very recently, within the past week or so, is fracking. As most of you know, the town of Brighton has passed a law banning hydrofracking and related heavy industrial activities in the town. And our action in doing that, and the action of so many other towns across New York State in doing that, the legality of that was recently upheld by the New York State Court of Appeals. There's been an article about the possibility that the state, the governor may consider changing state policy and allowing fracking. I have signed, I know some of my colleagues have already signed, and maybe more than that, but I think we've all been a part of a group, Elected Officials to Protect New York, which is a bipartisan group of local elected officials who have advocated for a ban on hydrofracking. And we've signed a recent letter to the governor asking that we not, you know, that the risks, the downsides of hydrofracking are still very, very real, particularly in this current, you know, the bottom is falling out of the energy market. It really doesn't make sense to risk our resources, particularly in the Finger Lakes area, wine country, which has become such a booming economic and tourism resource, for an asset that, frankly, today, the value of it is plunging. Part of that is because other states have allowed hydrofracking. Good for them. Other states have borne some significant burdens. You hear about North Dakota and their unemployment rate. They are the lowest unemployment rate in the nation. They're also experiencing some of the worst crime in the nation. And the list goes on of the negative environmental and social impacts that have been seen and demonstrated by hydrofracking. So I know for myself, I feel the same way, and I continue to believe that we've done the right thing in the town of Brighton in prohibiting hydrofracking and related activities, and hope that the state will continue that. There was also an article about, and by the way, Josh Baroth, who was here earlier from the county legislature, has also signed on to that letter supporting a continued ban on fracking. But there was also a letter, an article in the paper about the use of brine for snow removal. The town of Brighton does not use brine in its snow removal activities in Brighton. So we are, you know, again, staying true to that. We are not using brine, much of which comes as a byproduct of hydrofracking And when it does, it's at risk of various leftover materials from the witch's brew that they don't disclose. By the way, the ingredients, they rely on, trade secrets to avoid disclosing what it is they're using, and also in some cases radioactive materials that come up when you recycle these fracking fluids into brine. So we don't do that. And that isn't going to change anytime soon. I wish the county would adopt that same policy, and maybe with a few more legislators like Josh Baroth, they will.
And the question had been raised at Sustainability Oversight Committee, whether or not the state or county uses it within the town, and Commissioner Keefe pointed out to me the reality of that we do not, they do not in the town of Brighton.
Right, the town does the snow and ice control on all the local county and state roads as well as the town roads. So since we do not use brine ourselves, no brine is applied in that fashion at all, Chris. And the question did come up, and I know that Ron Wexler from the Sustainability Oversight Committee was asking, because actually putting brine down does have advantages. And again, I'm not advocating for putting brine down or using the wrong kind of brine, but because it's a pre-wetted solution, it can be put down and maybe be a little more effective than the dry rock salt we put down. However, that requires, again, just like we're talking about the leaf factors and everything else, a large capital outlay to retrofit our vehicles and to set up ourselves to do that. And right now, that would be a very difficult cost to incur. Time and time again, people will say, I can tell when I'm in Brighton. The roads are taken well care of by the crews here with the technology that we use today. And, unless we really start to look at other means, as has been suggested, to do snow and ice control, right now, I think we do the premier job in the county. And it's all attributable to our crews. And if you want to call it doing it the old-fashioned way, which mostly everybody does here locally, then so be it. But they do a hell of a job.
Thanks, Tim. Next, I just want to mention, as we do every year, this past Monday, time to coincide with Pearl Harbor Day, is the annual Veterans Luncheon. That's really something that our town park attendant, Rich Wagner, and his wife have, and she works for the VA, have done. We do it at our town park, Carmen Clark Lodge. It's an opportunity for veterans, some of whom, you hate to hear the word veteran in need in the same sentence, and unfortunately that's the sentence we have to do. These are veterans, in many cases, in need. Getting services through the VA, through the Veterans Outreach Center. Todd Baxter, the former Greece police chief, who's the executive director at the Veterans Outreach Center, was there. The chief was there. The board was there. But I'm glad that thanks to so many generous people and the hard work of the Wagners, and really our whole parks and our recreation staff, we were again able to have a great lunch and say thank you to some people that we ought to be thanking, not just on Pearl Harbor Day and Veterans Day, but every day for what they've done for the country.
That was quite a turnout.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Every table was full.
Yeah.
And Bill, I met a man there who was a veteran from the Vietnam War. He was telling me that he still has nightmares. He still wakes up screaming sometimes. And so we're dealing with generations of veterans that are coming in. Some are homeless, some are doing okay, but it's an ongoing thing.
Yes, it is. The last thing I want to mention is the Unite Rochester pledge that was in the newspaper recently. There's been a lot going on in our larger community and in our nation. And there's been a lot going on in the Rochester area, efforts formal and informal, from groups like the Rochester Area Community Foundation, like the YWCA, and like Gannett through this Unite Rochester program, that have been formally working to bridge some of the economic, racial, and social divides in this community. Some of those have been informal as well. Mark and I have engaged in an ongoing dialogue with members of the Brighton community that has been, I think, valuable and eye-opening for both sides, and that will continue. But along that line, the Unite Rochester group, following not only the recent failure to indict in Ferguson, also the failure to indict on Staten Island, and really some very uncivil, I could use a lot worse words to describe the conduct and the conversation in the wake of that. I don't think anybody is questioning that we as a community and a lot of communities out there have work to do, getting people in the same room, getting people talking, getting people to recognize that there are serious issues relating to poverty, and that they manifest themselves in our education system, in law enforcement, and in so many other ways. And the Unite Rochester has asked people to commit to a pledge, to sign a pledge. I've signed that pledge. I want to encourage my colleagues up here and folks at home. And I'm going to read that pledge very quickly here because it is short. It says, I acknowledge the challenges encountered along racial and economic lines in our community and pledge to overcome our differences and disagreements in a way that unites us. I will seek to engage in constructive and direct conversations with those who think differently. And I pledge that my conversations and actions will respect the dignity of all those in the greater Rochester community. Finally, I believe our unity will ultimately bring us together and result in meaningful change for our region. So again, I've signed that pledge. I think it's important in these difficult times. In Brighton, we've had these conversations, and I think all of us acknowledge that getting people in the same room is important, but it's not enough. And certainly in my role as supervisor, in other elected officials, we can all make a difference in our actions in ensuring that problems of concentrated poverty in this community that were well documented in the report issued about a year ago by the Rochester Area Community Foundation, we need to act. That report's been out for a year. It triggered some of these conversations. But there are things that we can all do as elected officials, but frankly, all of us in the community can do that. Here in Brighton, we embrace the diversity. It's our hallmark. I firmly believe that that diversity is part of what makes us strong. It makes us special. And so I encourage everybody that feels that way about Brighton, to really take that to heart, embrace that in all the things we do, in our contacts with other community members, both here at home and around the area. The problems of this community don't respect borders. They don't, many of them don't respect economic, racial divides. We face challenges as a community. This is one step, but I think it's a good step. I think if nothing else, it will maintain the civil dialogue that frankly has always been a hallmark of our community. When we return to that, we can begin to discuss solutions, not just taunts and buzzwords to these real problems that we face.
Where do we get this pledge to sign?
The DNC's webpage. It's available there. It was also available hard copy in Sunday's newspaper where you can mail it in. That's everything. Matters of the attorney to the town.
I don't have any, thank you.
Matters of the clerk.
Nothing for me?
Matters of the board.
I have a couple things. Mark, I have a question about 911. I've been approached by a couple of neighbors who have gotten the telephone, which you also get a pendant, and you can put 2 phone numbers on them. And what they usually do is put somebody from the family they can call if they're in an emergency, and they put a 911 call on it. They want to know what happens if they call 911 by mistake. And why I couldn't answer them was I went to a friend's house who passed away, and her phone was near the front door where the ambulance came in. So we wanted to know who was the last person she called. And I called redial, and it was 911. So I said, I'm sorry, this was a mistake call or something. They called me back to confirm that nothing was wrong, and that's why we called. So they want to know if they make mistakes and call 911, what's going to happen, and if in fact that should be on that pendant.
Yeah, actually, what'll happen is, in your case, in your example, they were able to make contact with you, and the telecommunicator established that all was okay. It's not uncommon for them to go ahead and send typically the police to verify that, just to make sure that nobody is being told what to say on the phone. I would strongly recommend, I'd be happy to meet with you or the person that has that phone number. We're actually going through the same type of an issue with a pendant in our family. 911 is a very good service. If you're not able to communicate, you can't talk, they have technology that will give XY coordinates, and it'll roll first responders with little or no conversation. But nobody should worry. If it's a misdial, there's protocols in place to try to establish that it is nothing that needs immediate response. If they cannot verify that, typically it'll be the police that'll respond. We'll go and find out what's happening.
Okay. The second thing was that our next town board meeting is going to be at noon on the 22nd.
22nd. Monday the 22nd.
Will not be televised, so I want to wish everybody happy holidays, happy New Year, and please feel free to continue contacting us if you have anything that you want us to consider. And the third thing, I want to ask everybody here, if you see a little gold earring. I walked in with 2, I only had 1, so I took it off. It's a teeny little one that goes right on there. So as you're walking around, look for my earring. That's it.
Thank you. Anything else? I too, thanks for reminding all of us that this is our last televised meeting of 2014, so we all want to give our holiday best to everybody. The next meeting will be here, but it will be on Monday the 22nd. The 24th would be Christmas Eve, and we're not going to do that. At noon, it won't be televised, and the meeting after that will be our organizational meeting, which will be Monday, January 5th, also at noon, and here in this room, but not televised. So then we'll get back on our regular our regular meeting schedule in January. But holiday wishes to everyone.
Yeah. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays. Yeah.
And with that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Whoa.
And a second? One of you can.
Second.
I already split them.
Good, you split them. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel.
Aye.
Councilmember Novros.
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. Thanks to our cable TV crew, and have a great evening and a great holiday season. Good night.